Today's story is about ghostly encounters of black masses rushing people and Revolutionary War veterans roaming around on the historic Mackinac Island. The island, which is nestled just a few miles from my hometown of St. Agnes, it has been home to the Native Americans for hundreds of years. The Ottawa tribes resided there alone until around the 17th century when the Europeans came and started exploring the island. Before we get too far into the ghost stories surrounding the island, I want to touch on the history of the island so you can kind of see where these ghosts may have originated. With the history of the Native American presence on the island, there's many cemeteries, some that date so far back they became more unrecognizable and lost to nature. Until years went by, and while building more modern homes and buildings, they would come across these ancient burial grounds all across the island. As well as after the Europeans arrived, they turned the island into sort of a central hub for the Great Lake fur trade, which led to the establishment of Fort Mackinac, which was the eventual stage of two major battles during the War of 1812. So, with the rich and violent history, it is easy to see why there's so many areas on the island that are said to be haunted. It's pretty much just a huge Indian burial ground where they went and built a fort and then had battles resulting in many deaths. We're going to discuss multiple locations on the island that are said to be haunted. Ghost stories, urban legends, and mysteries. Things that have captured people's attention for thousands of years. From the first known cave paintings where they depicted large humanoid people with animal heads, all the way to today with sightings of Bigfoot, paranormal activity, and unidentified flying objects. And on this channel, we take a look at the unknown. If you enjoy mysteries, like and subscribe to catch all the future videos. We're going to start with a very well-known building on the island that kind of catches your eye on the boat ride over, called the Grand Hotel, where legend has it that construction workers uncovered human remains while digging the hotel's foundation. There is said to be dozens and dozens of entities in that hotel. People have reported hearing creaks and even the doors shutting when there was nobody else around, as well as ghostly figures since shortly after the building had began. In the years that have passed, many reports came out of things that have been seen in the Grand by staff. Staff have even reported seeing a gentleman dressed to his best, with his top hat and all, calmly playing a piano at the hotel bar. But if you approach him, the sound of the piano will stop and he will just vanish into thin air. Others have seen a younger woman, dressed in old Victorian-type clothing, wandering endlessly through the halls, with her head kind of looking around like she's looking for something or someone. Reports even say that she will move objects and blankets on the beds as if she was getting ready to lay down. The earliest known report in the hotel comes from a maintenance man who was working on the theater stage all alone at night when he saw what he described as an evil entity. It was a black mass with huge glowing red eyes. He froze until this mass started rushing him from one side of the stage to the other. Well, as he was trying to flee, he felt two hands touch his back and shove him where he fell, and he hit his head, knocking him unconscious. Well, when he fell, he kind of tumbled between the curtain wall and the wall, so no one could see him. Nobody even noticed that he was missing. After 2 days had went by, he woke up, stunned and terrified, not knowing exactly what happened. He fled. The next day, he approached his boss to tell him that he was quitting. And he wouldn't say why, but he never returned back to that hotel. Another hot spot on the island is referred to as the Drowning Pool. It received its name because of the brutal history that took place back in the late 1700s when they used the area for witch trials. Well, back in those days, the method that they used to determine if the accused was actually a witch or not was they would tie rocks to their feet and then they'd throw them into a body of water to see if they would float or not. If they sank, they were deemed innocent, because if they were a witch, they would save themselves and float. It is said in 1793 there were 7 women that were accused of practicing witchcraft, where they were forcibly marched through town town to a lagoon between Mission Point and the downtown area, where they held a trial. They dumped all 7 women into the water, where they all sank and drowned. Legend says that the women still haunt the water to this day, with countless reports of mysterious splashing and dark figures floating above the surface of the water, as well as what has been described as a group of women crying late at night. That sounds like it's just over your shoulder, but when you turn to see where these cries are coming from, they follow, almost sounding like they are right on your back. I personally even had my own experience in this location when I was younger. It all started in the afternoon on one of the colder months. It must have been November or December. Well, while I was sitting on the edge of the water where the ice and the land connect, I was standing right off a brittle point where I saw this speck, maybe 5 feet in front of me. It looked like just a little piece of dirt on the top of the ice. Well, knowing that it's not very deep right there, I figured it must just be a piece of dirt, speck, something. Well, throughout time, this thing slowly started moving towards me. And as it did, it got bigger and bigger. Now, it really caught my attention because whatever it was, it shouldn't be moving, let alone there was no wind, so what would be pushing it? Thinking maybe it was a fish or something like that, I watched it. As it got closer and closer, maybe 2 feet in front of me, where the water is only about ankle high, so I mean there's no way that there would have been anything really under there, because with it being frozen, I mean there would only be a little bit of water under there. Well, not knowing what this thing was, I watched it, and as it got bigger and bigger, it reached about the size of a beach ball, and then it vanished just in thin air. Well, I didn't know what to think of it, so I just waited for my friend to arrive. I finally told him about the story, and he just reassured me that it must have been a fish. Well, I do still wonder to this day what that blob underneath that ice really was. Then comes the fort, a Revolutionary War area fort, which has become a tourist site on the island. Many people have reported strange orbs appearing and disappearing in many of the pictures throughout the fort. In the fort hospital, people say there's a feeling of sadness that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, as well as people witnessing what they have called phantom limbs. A war reenactor years ago says that while he was walking into the hospital, he noticed laying on the floor what looked like a leg. It looked like this leg had been blown off by maybe a cannon or an explosion. The thigh area was still gushing blood into the floorboards, and then in the blink of an eye, it vanished. It was gone. It's also said that in the officer stone quarters, it's another location in the island where ghostly children are said to roam. They play with toys in the rooms, throwing the toys all over the rooms for the morning staff to clean up. Mission Point was home to the moral realignment movement that started back in the 1930s. The building began to be built in the late 1950s and is now home to one of the most popular ghost stories on the island. It's about a man named Harvey who died in the late 60s. The story goes that Harvey was dealing with a broken heart and decided to take his own life behind the resort, where he wasn't discovered until almost 6 months had passed. Some people actually think there's more to Harvey's story, and he was actually murdered. Visitors have said that while they were in the theater, they felt like someone was watching them, and it even felt like a pinch and even pokes. A young woman claims that while she was visiting the resort, she experienced strange activity while in her room alone. The bathroom door randomly slammed shut, and then the lights just turned off, which was terrifying. She tried to flip the light switch, but nothing happened. So she fled. She never returned to that room alone. Another report comes from Reddit, where a yearly tourist reports that when they were a child visiting the Windermere Hotel with their grandmother, staying 4 nights in the hotel nestled on the bottom floor, on their first night, as they both slept on separate beds, it wasn't until early morning when the girl woke up and she rolled over to see that grandma was still sleeping, but there was something else in the room. With the morning sun piercing through, she could see what looked like an elderly woman in a white nightgown with an Amish-type bonnet on her head, standing over her grandma. After a few seconds went by and her brain was trying to rationalize what she was seeing, she yelled, "Grandma!" That was the moment that the bed just started shaking and grumbling. She pulled the covers up over her head. Terrified, she stayed under the covers for the rest of the night, for what felt like forever, till the sun was so bright and she finally heard Grandma starting to get up. So she got up. She asked Grandma, Maybe it was a bad dream. I don't know. So she asked Grandma, "Did you get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom or something?" Grandma said no. She didn't get up at all. She slept all the way through the whole night. So she told Grandma what she had seen. Grandma immediately believed her because, the legends that persist on the island, there's got to be different things that you're not going to understand. So they chose to switch rooms where they stayed the other 3 days. They never had another experience, but all the years that they've came back to the island, they've chose to not go to that room. With countless ghost stories from locals and visitors alike. Another interesting one comes from a person who lived on the island for approximately 5 years. One night, while it was really late, they were walking from the gatehouse, and while they turned down Market Street, they noticed to the right of them, the street light down by the Kingston was just flashing absolutely crazy, uncontrollably. Well, with the old cemetery that's in that area, it's a well-known hotbed for activity. They never again witnessed the light doing that or any other experiences, but who knows? Have you ever been to Mackinac Island? Have you ever had a ghostly experience? If so, leave a comment down in the comment section below.